how well did your grandfather know Joseph Kennedy?
They did business together in the bootlegging times, and my grandfather didn't like him because they were smuggling immigrants and they were smuggling alcohol or whiskey. And if they were getting chased and they needed to, lighten the load, they would throw the people overboard, the immigrants overboard before the alcohol. And my grandfather just, hated Joe Kennedy because of that.
So your grandfather didn't like him, but either way, through Joe's connects, he goes to the mob and says, my son would like to be president. Right. How do we make that happen? So what did they do to get, I feel like a lot of people don't know this history and they should. What did they do to get Kennedy into office?
Well, of course, the mob had a lot of influence in a lot of the unions, specifically, the Teamsters union with Hoffa. And, they basically said, hey, we want to get this guy in. And, they went to their membership and, the membership basically helped him get elected. And they felt that they were, they were key. They being, my grandfather and the Mafia felt like, they did the right thing. They helped him get elected. And in exchange, I guess the understanding was that they would, kind of look the other way or, there would be some upside for them helping to get the Kennedys into office.
It would take some of that public heat they're seeing with Valachi.
Right, off.
Right.
That was in theory, but as we know, especially Robert and John, they went after the mob, right? They felt like that was one of the biggest scourges in the country at the time, and they were going to put an end to it. Knowing what their father did, who knows if they really knew, what the father. I have to think they did.
They had to know,
right? You had to know, but I don't think we will never know for sure, but.
Because he didn't win that election. He didn't between
you said, right?
You mentioned the unions 100%, and then the other thing is, like if people go look at the map, I guess like the electoral map of 1960 of Kennedy Nixon, he won by razor thin margins in Illinois and Texas in particularly, and like there was the known fact that like the mob was having dead people vote in Chicago and in Dallas and stuff like that. And they put him into office. And then, like you said, he makes his younger brother the AG. And I mean, Bobby Kennedy took this Valachi thing and made that look like a Swedish massage. I mean, he put all these guys in front of the camera. So, it was nuts. And so the big conspiracy that everyone always thinks about, because clearly there was shit done, is Kennedy getting murdered in Dallas in November '63. And I've been comfortable with it for a long time with the fact that the Mafia was involved in that. Right. But how much I assume you never talked about that with your grandfather, but like, I don't know if you talked with your dad about it. Like, how much information did you ever get on that growing up?
Yeah, I mean, the line my dad used all the time was, it's not a question of whether there was a second gun, it's who has it now. And he had claimed that when he was he was doing time in Terminal Island, and the shooter, I don't recall the name. I wish I would have remembered, the name the guy told me. My dad did say that when he was telling me the story, he told me the guy's name. I just don't remember it. But, he claimed that this guy said, yeah, he was in the grate under the grassy knoll, took his shots, walked out, got into a car and took off. So, it's hearsay. I've heard a guy told my dad this, but I had no reason to not believe my dad. And I don't think my dad would have any reason to, make up a story.
I bet he's not making it up.
But I mean, that's what he believed. What I'm trying to say is I'm confident that's my dad believed that's what happened. And I tend to believe that my dad was telling me, he believed that for a reason and he had, some inside information. So I believe that's the way it went down. I know in high school we did this whole thing about, the lone gunman theory and trying to, figure out how they could make that many shots in that small of an area in that amount of time.
Not
and it was
possible.
just the physics alone, there had to be something else. And there was something else. So, we will never know the truth, right? But that's the story that I was told.
Devil's advocate, even if the guy telling that to your dad was full of shit and just looking for attention, either way, the evidence around it to show the involvement of, to name a few names here, the Mafia for sure, Cuban elements, and at least some members of the CIA in the middle of that is, I use the word irrefutable. Just starting with Jack Ruby alone, who was a known associate, the whole bit, like, oh, why is he there to make him shut up? And the guy had cancer too. It was like he was on his way out. It was too perfect how they did this. So it's not a matter of like, to me, did they? It's a matter of, well, all right, maybe that guy was telling the truth. Maybe he told your dad the right story and he was down there, or his friend was down there and he took credit. But there was someone down there, and I'll bet it wouldn't have been, to me, it wouldn't have been someone that they could have tied in any sort of like governmental or official capacity way to the CIA. It would have had to be some sort of criminal element, in the same way that like Lee Harvey Oswald was like a communist sympathizer or something like that. Like they'd have to make that tie up. So it only makes sense to me that the likely outcome was that the shooter was either a Cuban or someone from the Mafia.
Right.
Period.
It's just easier to believe. It seemed like a hit, right? It didn't, it didn't seem like some lone nut just decided to take some pot shots at the president. No, there's definitely seemed like that was a hit. Somebody double crossed, and there's the story. There's where the double cross happened, and that was the price you paid. And going back to my previous comment, nobody who ever got whacked by the Mafia didn't know it was coming. So I would put that in that category, because they had to know, Bobby and JFK, that when they decided to go against the Mafia, that they were not just going to let it happen. That wasn't it's not the nature of that beast.
I'll bet they did it. You're right. So, like, knowing what we know, you're right. Yeah. But I'll bet they didn't, because they were so separated from reality. Right. Especially
they were Kennedys.
Yeah, they're Kennedys. They're the fucking president and the AG. They're like,
no way, they can't touch us. Right.
But they didn't do it alone. Like in their, I guess, like defense. Like this wasn't like just the Mafia. Like, all right, whack them. It's like, all right, we're dealing with so and so at the CIA or whatever. Okay.
Right. There was a lot of interests that were satisfied. They didn't shed a tear when he got shot.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.